The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council gleamed with bioluminescent panels, casting soft light across representatives from 47 different species. Today marked 50 years since the Great Armistice, the treaty that had ended the devastating sector wars and brought peace to a shattered galaxy. Commander Ji-hoon Park stood at the observation deck of Luna Station, watching the ceremony below through reinforced glass. His reflection showed a man in his mid-40s, wearing the simple gray uniform of Earth's Diplomatic Defense Corps. Behind him, the skeletal remains of the EFS Indomitable hung in space, Earth's last official warship, waiting for its final performance. "They're ready for you, Commander," a young officer said, her voice respectful but tinged with sadness. Ji-hoon nodded and made his way to the command center. Cameras from every major galactic network pointed at the Indomitable. This public destruction would be broadcast across thousands of worlds, a symbol of humanity's commitment to peace. In the control room, Dr. Sarah Chen waited beside the detonation console. Her dark eyes met his, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them. She adjusted her glasses and smiled slightly. "Beginning final sequence," Ji-hoon announced for the cameras. His fingers moved across the holographic controls. In accordance with the Universal Demilitarization Accord, humanity surrenders its final military vessel to the cause of eternal peace. The Indomitable began breaking apart in controlled explosions. Piece by piece, the warship that had served Earth for 30 years dissolved into glittering debris. The assembled diplomats applauded. The Velinar representative, a tall being with silver skin and multiple arms, spoke words of praise for humanity's commitment to peace. Ji-hoon kept his expression neutral. The galaxy saw humanity as a minor species, barely relevant during the sector wars. Earth had contributed a few ships, lost some colonies, but largely stayed on the periphery of the conflict. When the treaty came, humanity had signed eagerly, promising to destroy all military-grade technology. What the galaxy didn't know was that humanity had spent 50 years preparing for this exact moment. "Ceremony complete," Dr. Chen announced. All cameras offline. Artels. The moment the broadcast ended, her expression changed. She pulled up a different display, one showing construction records from the past 5 decades. Ji-hoon joined her, studying the data he'd memorized years ago. "The Kresh are moving," Sarah said quietly. Intelligence picked up mobilization near the outer colonies. 3 battle groups, maybe more. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. The Kresh Empire had signed the armistice, but everyone knew they'd hidden ships in deep space. They'd spent 50 years waiting for the rest of the galaxy to grow weak. How long until they reach the colonies? 2 weeks, maybe 3. The Council is still debating whether it's even a real threat. Sarah's voice carried frustration. 50 years of peace made them forget what war looks like. Ji-hoon thought back to the day Earth's leadership had made their decision. The treaty required demilitarization, the destruction of all military technology. But it said nothing about civilian infrastructure. Humanity had looked at their weapons and asked a simple question. What else could these systems do? A plasma cannon could also be a mining laser. A missile guidance system could track asteroids. A warship's reactor could power a space station. Military-grade sensors could map trade routes. Humanity hadn't destroyed their technology. They'd transformed it. Over 50 years, Earth had become the galaxy's premier infrastructure builder. Human fusion reactors powered colonies on 100 worlds. Human medical stations orbited planets across 20 sectors. Human trade hubs facilitated commerce between species that had been enemies during the war. Every single one contained hidden military capabilities. Project Chrysalis, Ji-hoon said softly. It was the name they'd given to the initiative decades ago. The idea that weapons could sleep as civilian tools, waiting like a butterfly in a cocoon to emerge when needed. Sarah nodded. We always knew this day might come. We hoped it wouldn't. A communication alert chimed. Ji-hoon accepted it, and the face of Admiral Choi Sung-jin appeared on screen. The Admiral was 73 now, one of the few remaining veterans of the actual sector wars. Commander Park, Choi said, his voice grave. I'm calling an emergency meeting of the Chrysalis Committee. The Kresh aren't just mobilizing. They've issued preliminary demands to independent colonies. Submit, or be destroyed. Ji-hoon felt his stomach tighten. Does the council know? They'll find out within hours. We need to decide if we're ready to reveal what we've built. Choi's expression was troubled. 50 years of secrecy. 50 years of trust from species who believed we'd truly disarmed. If we activate Chrysalis, some will call us liars. Others will call us saviors. We'll be both, Sarah said quietly. The Admiral nodded. Committee meets in 6 hours. Be ready to defend our choice. Good. The connection ended. Ji-hoon looked out at the debris field where the Indomitable had been. The galaxy thought humanity had beaten its swords into plowshares, had become peaceful builders and merchants. They were right. Humanity had transformed its weapons into tools of peace. But steel was steel, and plowshares could be reshaped back into swords if necessary. His personal communicator buzzed with an encrypted message. Ji-hoon read it twice, then deleted it from existence. Project Chrysalis may be needed sooner than planned. He looked at Sarah, then at the hundreds of human installations marked on her display. Medical stations, trade hubs, research platforms, mining facilities, communications, relays, each one built with dual purposes, each one containing dormant military systems. Call the engineering teams, he said finally. Start running diagnostics on all Chrysalis platforms. If the Council asks us to defend the galaxy, I want to be ready to answer. Sarah began typing commands. Around the galaxy, in stations humanity had built to serve everyone, quiet systems began waking up. Peace had lasted 50 years. It might not last much longer. Lee Min-seo floated through the corridor of Medical Station Harmony, her magnetic boots clicking softly against the metal floor. The station orbited a lush world called Velinar Prime, home to the silver-skinned Velinar people. Min-seo had worked here for 2 years as a maintenance engineer, keeping the fusion reactors running and the surgical bays operational. She loved this job. The station treated patients from a dozen different species, offering free medical care to anyone who needed it. Humanity had built 17 stations like this across the galaxy, symbols of Earth's commitment to helping others. Min-seo reached the reactor control room and began her routine inspection. The fusion core hummed steadily, producing enough power for the entire facility. She pulled up diagnostic screens, checking radiation levels and fuel consumption. Everything looked normal. But her supervisor had mentioned a glitch in the secondary systems, asking her to run a deep diagnostic. Min-seo initiated the scan and waited. The screen flickered. New systems appeared that she'd never seen before. Her breath caught. The diagnostic showed weapon capacitors, targeting arrays, and what looked like military-grade shield generators. She must have triggered something by accident. Min-seo tried to close the display, but it kept expanding, revealing more and more hidden systems. The surgical lasers she'd calibrated yesterday weren't just medical tools. According to these schematics, they could be reconfigured into planetary bombardment cannons. The fusion reactor she maintained had a secondary mode that could overload it into a bomb. The communications array she'd repaired last month was actually a targeting system. Min-seo's hands shook. This couldn't be real. Medical Station Harmony was exactly what it claimed to be. She'd seen it save lives, had helped doctors treat patients. There had to be a mistake. You found it, a voice said behind her. Min-seo spun around. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the doorway, her expression calm but serious. Min-seo had met Dr. Chen once during orientation, knew she was one of the senior administrators of the Civilian Applications Initiative. I don't understand, Min-seo stammered. These systems, they're military, but we're a medical station. We're both, Sarah said gently. She stepped into the room and closed the door. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. We usually brief engineers in their third year, but circumstances have changed. May I explain? Mincio nodded, still staring at the impossible schematics. Sarah took a deep breath. 50 years ago, humanity signed the Universal Demilitarization Accord. We agreed to destroy all military technology. And we did exactly that. We dismantled every warship, every weapons platform, every dedicated military installation. But these systems are civilian technology? Sarah interrupted. A surgical laser that can cut through tissue can also cut through armor if you adjust the focus. A fusion reactor that powers a hospital can power weapons if you redirect the output. We didn't lie, Mincio. We genuinely converted our military technology into peaceful applications. But you kept the ability to convert it back. Yes, Sarah's voice was quiet. The galaxy wanted peace. We gave them peace. But we remembered what the sector wars taught us. Pacifism doesn't stop aggression. It just makes you a victim. Mincio felt dizzy. How many stations are like this? Sarah pulled up a galactic map. Hundreds of dots appeared, each one marking a human installation. Trade hubs, mining platforms, research stations, agricultural satellites. Every single one pulsed with a hidden designation. Chrysalis. All of them, Sarah said. Every major installation humanity has built in the last 50 years contains hidden military capabilities. Not because we want war, but because we know sometimes peace needs defending. The other species don't know? No. They trusted us to disarm, and we did. We just chose to define disarmament differently than they expected. Mincio thought about the Velinar patients sleeping in medical bays below her feet. The children recovering from rare diseases. The elderly receiving treatments their own world couldn't provide. All of them resting inside what was secretly a weapons platform. This feels wrong, she whispered. I know, Sarah said. It should feel wrong. We're lying to people who trust us. But Mincio, there's a reason we're telling you now. Sarah pulled up news feeds. Reports flooded the screen about Kresh Empire movements. Military buildups. Threats against independent colonies. The Kresh had kept their weapons hidden in deep space, and now they were emerging. The galaxy is in danger, Sarah continued. The Kresh never truly disarmed. They waited for everyone else to become weak, and now they're making their move. The Galactic Council is helpless. They have no military, no defense, nothing. Except us, Mincio said slowly. Except humanity. We have a choice to make. We can stay hidden, protect ourselves, and watch the galaxy fall back into war. Or we can reveal what we've built and use it to defend everyone. Mincio looked at the schematics again. She thought about the weapons hiding inside instruments of healing. It was deceptive. It was clever. It was very human. If we activate these systems, she asked, what happens to the patients? They get evacuated first. Every chrysalis platform has detailed emergency protocols. Patients, civilians, anyone vulnerable, gets moved to safety before military systems activate. We're not monsters, Mincio. We're protectors. Who asked us to protect them? No one. That's what makes it a choice worth making. Before Mincio could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Sarah's communicator lit up with urgent messages. She read them quickly, her face paling. The Kresh just issued an ultimatum to the Galactic Council. Submit to their rule or face annihilation. They're giving the galaxy 72 hours to respond. Mincio felt her world shifting. 50 years of peace was ending. The question was whether humanity would reveal its secret and fight for everyone, or stay hidden and fight only for themselves. What do we do? She asked. Sarah met her eyes. We wait for orders. And we pray the Council makes the right choice. Outside the viewport, Velinar Prime turned slowly, beautiful and peaceful and utterly defenseless, just like the rest of the galaxy. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began with chaos. Representatives from 47 species crowded the chamber, their voices raised in fear and anger. Holographic displays showed Kresh battle groups emerging from deep space, massive armadas that had been hiding for decades. Emperor Vexthor of the Kresh Empire appeared on the central screen, his 4 eyes gleaming with confidence. His species resembled armored insects, with chitinous plates covering powerful bodies. "The age of false peace is over," Vexthor announced. "The Kresh Empire claims sovereignty over half the settled systems. Those who submit immediately will be allowed to govern themselves under our supervision. Those who resist will be destroyed. You have 72 hours." The transmission ended. Silence fell over the chamber. The Velinar representative, Ambassador Shelnara, was first to speak. "This is impossible. We have no military. The demilitarization accord stripped us of all weapons, which is exactly what the Kresh were counting on," said the Thurian delegate, his rocky features grim. "They never truly disarmed. They hid their fleets and waited for us to weaken ourselves." Arguments erupted. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others demanded they somehow build defenses, though everyone knew it would take years they didn't have. A few suggested fleeing to unexplored space, abandoning their worlds. Commander Ji-hoon Park sat in the human delegation section, listening. Admiral Choi sat beside him, along with Dr. Chen and 3 other members of the Chrysalis Committee. They'd been debating for hours before this session began. The question was simple: reveal humanity's secret, or stay hidden? "We should speak," Admiral Choi whispered. Ji-hoon nodded. He stood, and his movement caught the council speaker's attention. "The human delegation wishes to address the council," the speaker announced. All eyes turned to Ji-hoon. He walked to the central platform, feeling the weight of dozens of species watching him. Some looked at humanity with hope, others with barely concealed contempt. Humans were considered minor players, builders, and merchants, not warriors or leaders. "Humanity has a proposal," Ji-hoon began. "We can defend the galaxy against the Kresh." Laughter erupted from several delegations. The Kresh threat had everyone terrified, and here was the human representative claiming Earth could somehow stop them. Ambassador Shelnara raised one of her 4 arms. "Commander Park, we appreciate your courage, but humanity demilitarized like everyone else. What defense could you possibly offer?" Ji-hoon took a deep breath. This was the moment that would define humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations. "We did demilitarize," he said carefully. "We destroyed every warship, every dedicated weapons platform, every military installation. We kept our promise, but we also kept our preparedness." He triggered a holographic display. The map showed hundreds of human installations across the galaxy. With a command, each one revealed its hidden military capabilities. The chamber fell silent. Every station, every platform, every facility humanity has built in the last 50 years was designed with dual purposes, Ji-hoon continued. They genuinely serve civilian needs. Medical Station Harmony has saved thousands of Velinar lives. But if needed, it can also defend Velinar Prime from orbital assault. "You lied to us," Ambassador Shelnara said, her voice shocked. "We transformed our weapons into tools of peace," Ji-hoon replied. "But we never forgot that tools can serve many purposes. A sword beaten into a plowshare is still steel, and steel can be reshaped when necessary." Admiral Choi stood and joined Ji-hoon on the platform. The elderly warrior commanded respect, even from species that had fought against Earth during the sector wars. "I fought in the wars that devastated this galaxy," Choi said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "I saw worlds burned, species driven to extinction, civilizations destroyed. When peace came, I swore I would do anything to prevent that from happening again." He gestured at the holographic display. "We kept our weapons hidden, not for conquest, but for this moment, when peace would need defending." when innocent species would face destruction from those who never truly embraced disarmament. You violated the treaty, accused the Thurian delegate. We followed its letter while preserving its spirit, Dr. Chen said, standing. The treaty demanded we destroy military technology. We did. It said nothing about building civilian technology that could serve defensive purposes, if required. Arguments erupted again. Some delegates praised humanity's foresight. Others condemned the deception. A few demanded humanity be punished for treaty violations before addressing the Kresh threat. Ji-hoon let them argue for several minutes before speaking again. We understand your anger. We accept your judgment. But right now, the Kresh are coming. In 3 days, they will begin their conquest. We can stop them, but only if you allow us to activate our defensive systems. And what happens after? Ambassador Shelnara asked quietly. Once your weapons are revealed, what's to stop humanity from conquering us instead? The question hung in the air. It was the fear Ji-hoon had known they would face. Power corrupted. A species with hidden weapons could become the galaxy's master. Nothing, Ji-hoon admitted. Nothing except our word, our history, and our choice. We could have revealed this capability years ago and demanded tribute. We didn't. We could have used it to seize territory or resources. We didn't. We chose to serve the galaxy peacefully, keeping our strength hidden until it was truly needed. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of species. Trust is earned through actions, not words. For 50 years, humanity has built, healed, and served. We ask you to trust that we will continue doing so, even with weapons in our hands. The vote was called. It took 3 hours. Some delegations walked out in protest. Others abstained. But when the count finished, the measure had passed by a narrow margin. Humanity was authorized to activate Project Chrysalis and defend the galaxy. Ji-hoon sent the encrypted signal. Across hundreds of worlds, quiet transformations began. Medical stations opened hidden weapons ports. Trade hubs deployed missile batteries. Mining platforms revealed military-grade sensors. Agricultural satellites activated electronic warfare systems. On Medical Station Harmony, Minseo watched her peaceful workplace transform into a fortress. Patients had been evacuated hours ago. Now she worked alongside military specialists, bringing dormant systems online. All Chrysalis platforms responding, Dr. Chen reported. We're as ready as we can be. Ji-hoon looked at the tactical display. The Kresh Armada was advancing, confident in their superiority. They expected to find defenseless worlds and terrified populations. Instead, they would find humanity's gift to the galaxy, peace that could defend itself. Let's show them, Ji-hoon said quietly. What peace built? The Kresh Armada arrived at the Silent Dream Nebula 3 days later, exactly as their ultimatum had promised. Emperor Vex Thor commanded from his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, watching his sensor displays with satisfaction. 200 warships advanced in perfect formation, ready to crush any resistance. Navigation reports human buoys throughout the nebula, his tactical officer reported. Simple civilian devices, marking safe passage routes. Vex Thor's mandibles clicked with amusement. Humanity tries to help us conquer them. How appropriate for such a servile species. What the Kresh didn't know was that those navigation buoys were talking to each other, building a tactical network that tracked every ship in the Armada. Aboard the orbital platform now designated Defense Station Harmony, Minseo worked frantically at her console. She'd spent 50 hours learning systems she'd never known existed, transforming from maintenance engineer to weapons coordinator. Kresh capital ships entering firing range, she reported to Commander Park, whose face appeared on her screen from Earth's tactical command center. Hold position, Ji-hoon ordered. Let them think we're helpless. The Kresh fleet reached the nebula's edge and began their advance toward the core worlds. Billions of civilians from dozens of species watched in terror, wondering if humanity's promised defense would actually work. Admiral Choi commanded the operation from Earth's orbital platform, a massive structure officially designated as a construction facility. In truth, it was the largest mobile weapons platform in the galaxy. All chrysalis stations report ready, Choi announced, initiating defense protocol. Across the galaxy, humanity's infrastructure awakened. The first Kresh battle group reached what appeared to be a simple agricultural satellite monitoring crop growth on a farming colony. The satellite suddenly deployed chaff clouds and electronic warfare beams, blinding the group's sensors. Before they could react, what they'd thought was a water processing station on the planet's surface revealed itself as a missile battery. "We're under attack," the Kresh group commander screamed. "Source unknown." More surprises awaited throughout the nebula. Medical ships that should have been fleeing instead moved to intercept. Their surgical lasers reconfigured for precision strikes against Kresh weapon systems. They didn't try to destroy ships, just disable them, leaving crews alive but weaponless. "Target their engines only," Ji-hoon ordered across all channels. "We're here to defend, not massacre." The Kresh adapted quickly, redirecting fire toward human installations. But humanity had spent 50 years preparing for this moment. Civilian fusion reactors redirected power to military-grade shields. Trade stations that handled cargo for dozens of species became fortified positions with overlapping fields of fire. Mining platforms deployed swarms of automated drones that harassed Kresh formations. Minseo coordinated the defense of an entire sector from her station. 3 Velinar colonies depended on her decisions. She watched Kresh ships advancing toward a refugee convoy, carrying civilians fleeing the invasion. "I can't get a clear shot," her weapons officer reported. "The refugees are too close." Minseo thought fast. "Reroute power from the medical bays to the tractor beams. We'll pull the refugees closer and use them as cover behind our shields." It was crazy. It was dangerous. But it worked. The station's enhanced tractor beams grabbed the refugee ships and pulled them into protective formation. The Kresh couldn't fire without hitting civilians, and they hesitated long enough for Minseo's weapons to disable their lead ships. "Refugee convoy secure," she reported, her voice shaking with adrenaline. Across the battlefield, similar stories played out. Humanity had turned the galaxy's infrastructure into a web of mutual defense. But they weren't fighting alone. The Thurian delegate had rushed home after the council vote. His people might have no warships, but they had mining equipment. Huge industrial lasers designed to cut asteroids, now fired at Kresh ships. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. The Velinar began using their civilian transports to evacuate endangered colonies, working alongside human medical ships. Other species jury-rigged whatever technology they had, joining the fight in small but meaningful ways. Emperor Vex's Thor watched his perfect invasion crumble into chaos. Every system showed more human installations than intelligence had reported. The weak, peaceful infrastructure builders had transformed into a coordinated defense network. "How did we miss this?" he demanded. His intelligence officer's voice trembled. "We didn't miss it, Emperor. These installations genuinely were civilian. They're transforming as we watch. Humanity built dual-purpose technology into everything." Vex Thor's rage grew. "Focus fire on the construction platform in Earth's orbit. Destroy their command center. Vex Thor's. Vex Thor's. Vex Thor's. Vex Thor's. Vex Thor's." The Eternal Conquest and 12 escort ships broke formation, burning hard toward Earth. If they could eliminate humanity's leadership, perhaps the defense would collapse. Admiral Choi watched them coming. The construction platform, officially designated New Dawn, was his command. His responsibility. It was also the largest chrysalis platform ever built. A city in space housing 50,000 workers, all of whom had been evacuated 6 hours ago. "Sir, we should retreat," his tactical officer urged. 13 capital ships against 1 platform. Choi shook his head. "The Kresh fleet will pass through the Velinar system if they reach Earth. 3 billion civilians. No defenses, except 1 medical station." He understood what he had to do. Reroute all power to engines and forward shields, Choi ordered. And someone play that old Earth song, the one about going out in a blaze of glory. The new dawn was enormous, built over decades to construct stations and ships. It had weapons, shields, and armor. But it was never meant for direct combat. Choi didn't care. He accelerated toward the Kresh formation. Is he insane? Vex Thor watched the construction platform rushing toward him like a meteor. The new dawn crashed into the Eternal Conquest at a significant fraction of light speed. The impact destroyed both vessels instantly, along with 4 Kresh escorts caught in the explosion. The remaining ships scattered, their formation broken, their emperor dead. Min Seo watched the explosion from her station, tears streaming down her face. She'd never met Admiral Choi, but she understood what he'd done. One life his to save billions. The Kresh advance collapsed. Without their emperor, without their formation, scattered across a galaxy that fought back from every corner, they began to retreat. Humanity's hidden weapons had done their job. Peace had defended itself. But the price had been paid in sacrifice. Part 5. The Galactic Council reconvened 2 weeks after the battle. The chamber looked the same, but everything had changed. Representatives who had once dismissed humanity now studied them with wary respect. The question on everyone's mind was simple. What happens now? Commander Ji-hoon Park stood before the assembly again, but this time Admiral Choi wasn't beside him. The elderly warrior had given his life to protect people he'd never met, from a species that had once been Earth's enemy. The Kresh have withdrawn to their home territory, Ji-hoon reported. They're no longer an immediate threat, but they remain armed and dangerous. The galaxy is safe. For now. Ambassador Shelnara rose to speak. Commander Park, the Velinar people owe humanity a debt we can never repay. Admiral Choi sacrificed himself to protect our world, but we must address the difficult truth. Humanity deceived us for 50 years. You armed yourselves, while the rest of us trusted you to remain peaceful. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Ji-hoon had expected this. Gratitude and resentment often lived side by side. You're right, he said simply. We did deceive you. We signed a treaty and then found ways to work around its intent while following its letter. That was wrong. The admission surprised many delegates. They'd expected humans to defend their actions, not acknowledge the moral compromise. But I won't apologize for the results, Ji-hoon continued. 50 years ago, this galaxy chose peace through disarmament. It was a beautiful idea. It was also naive. The sector wars taught humanity a hard lesson. Predators don't stop hunting just because prey decides to remove its claws. He pulled up images from the recent battle. Ships disabled but not destroyed. Civilians evacuated and protected. Kresh soldiers captured rather than killed. We kept weapons hidden because we knew someday they might be needed. But look at how we used them. We could have annihilated the Kresh fleet. Instead, we disabled it. We could have conquered vulnerable worlds during the chaos. Instead, we protected them. We had power, and we chose to wield it as a shield, not a sword. Dr. Chen joined him on the platform. Humanity learned during the sector wars that visible military strength breeds conflict. Nations arm themselves out of fear, then use those arms out of pride or anger. We wanted to try something different. Strength that sleeps until needed. Power that serves rather than dominates. Lee Min-seo was present in the chamber, representing the younger generation of humans who had maintained the secret. She spoke quietly, but clearly. I only learned about Project Chrysalis 2 weeks ago. When I discovered the truth, I felt betrayed. I'd been lied to, had maintained weapons without knowing it, but then I saw those weapons save lives. I watched my station protect refugees from 3 different species. The deception still bothers me, but I understand why it was necessary. A new delegate stood, representing the Thurian mining colonies. My people contributed to the defense with our civilian equipment. It made me realize that all technology can serve multiple purposes. Perhaps the real question isn't whether we have weapons, but whether we have the wisdom to use them only when absolutely necessary. The debate continued for hours. Some species praised humanity's foresight. Others condemned the deception. Many fell somewhere in between, grateful for protection but uncomfortable with how it had been achieved. Finally, Ji-hoon proposed something new. Humanity suggests a replacement for the Universal Demilitarization Accord. We call it the Guardian Accord. Every species maintains transparent defensive capabilities, but under strict oversight. No hidden fleets, no secret weapons, just honest acknowledgement that peace sometimes needs protecting. He activated a holographic display showing the proposal's details. First, defensive technology only. No weapons designed purely for conquest or intimidation. Second, full transparency. Every species declares what capabilities they maintain. Third, mutual defense. Any species threatened by aggression receives help from all others. Fourth, technology sharing. Humanity will release all our dual-use designs publicly. Any species can build the same systems we created. The last point caused surprise. Humanity was offering to give away its strategic advantage. Why would you share your technology? Ambassador Shelnara asked. Because true security doesn't come from having more weapons than everyone else, Dr. Chen replied. It comes from building a galaxy where everyone can defend themselves and each other. We don't want to be the only ones with power. We want to teach others how to be strong without being aggressive. The proposal went to a vote. It passed with overwhelming support. Over the following months, the galaxy transformed. Species began building their own dual-use infrastructure, learning from humanity's example. Medical stations with hidden defensive capabilities, trade hubs that could become fortresses, agricultural platforms that doubled as sensor networks. But this time, everyone knew what they were building. The deception was over, replaced by honest preparation for a dangerous universe. Minseo was promoted to training coordinator, teaching engineers from a dozen species how to maintain dual-purpose systems. She found the work meaningful in ways her old job had never been. She wasn't just keeping equipment running. She was helping build a galaxy that could defend itself. 3 months after the battle, Ji-hoon attended the dedication ceremony for Admiral Choi's memorial on Earth. The monument was simple. A stone pillar overlooking the ocean where Choi had been born. Words were carved in multiple languages, readable by any species that visited. Peace is not the absence of weapons, but the wisdom to use them only in defense of others. Ji-hoon stood before the memorial, remembering his friend and mentor. Choi had been 30 years older, a veteran who had seen the worst of war. He'd spent his final decades working for peace, knowing that sometimes peace required the capacity for violence. You were right, Ji-hoon said softly to the stone. We couldn't just be peaceful. We had to be protectors. His communicator chimed. Dr. Chen's message was brief. Kresh diplomatic delegation, requesting talks. They want to discuss joining the Guardian Accord. Ji-hoon smiled. Even the Kresh were learning. Their aggression had been met not with annihilation, but with firm defense. Humanity had shown them they couldn't conquer the galaxy, but also that they wouldn't be destroyed for trying. Perhaps that was the real lesson. Strength without aggression, power without domination. The capacity for violence paired with the wisdom not to use it except as a last resort. The galaxy had spent 50 years learning that peace without strength was fragile. Now, it was learning that strength without restraint was dangerous. The balance between those truths would determine whether this new era lasted. Ji-hoon looked up at the stars, at the galaxy humanity had chosen to protect rather than conquer. They'd hidden their war technology and transformed it while the galaxy slept. Now, everyone was awake, and the real work of building lasting peace could begin. Not peace through helplessness, but peace through the shared commitment to defend it. The stars shone brightly, full of species learning to be strong together rather than weak alone. It was a beginning worth fighting for.